Hi guys and welcome back to Physical Science. It's the grade 12 show, Learn Extra Live, and I hope that you guys are having an awesome time. If you missed out, we have Shanae that is next to us, and if you do have any questions, please let us know on the page. Kashifa says, hi Shanae, and she said, so you're from Ladysmith, that's not too far from me, Harry Smith. You guys should chat. You're also quite a clever cookie. So, Tracy, let's carry on with the show, and then we'll go over questions just now. What do you think?
I think so. It's of course if they remembered I'm here, but it's okay. I won't get offended. I can understand.
Oh yes, Tracy's teaching.
Oh yes, oh, that's what we were doing here.
Oh yeah.
Actually, that sounds like my classroom. Actually, it's brilliant. But it's okay if you're asking Shanae questions. It's great. She's a great girl. She's what I wish my kids were like. Oh, no, I've just offended half of them.
They're all watching you. Tomorrow you're going to be in so much trouble,
No,
Tracy.
I love them all. They know that. Some of them are just very special.
Special.
Yes, I tell them that. It's all right.
But you love them all nonetheless.
I try.
Carry on with
Anyway,
carry on.
All right, so let's move on to making ammonium sulfate, okay, where we now take ammonia, oh, look at that, and we add it to sulfuric acid. The way we produce sulfuric acid is very, very, very important. It's our third industrial process, which is known as the contact process. The production of sulfuric acid is actually really important for us, grade 12s, and I tell my kids this all the time, please don't ask me why, I don't understand this, but a country's industrial wealth is actually measured by how much sulfuric acid they produce. And so South Africa is considered a fairly wealthy country. We produce tons of sulfuric acid every single day, and we export it. It goes around the world from us. So we're actually considered in terms of industrial wealth, it's all the different NX, I don't understand it. I teach science and not economics for a reason, but we're actually really, really rich because we make so much sulfuric acid. So we make it, not only do we use it to make things like ammonium sulfate, but we export it. Sulfuric acid is an incredibly, incredibly important industrial acid. It's used in a lot of processes. So let's go through how we make it, because it's a really important one. Now, step one is really, really simple. We take sulfur, burn it in oxygen, gives us sulfur dioxide. Sometimes we also get sulfur from the burning of coal. The coal that we mine isn't 100% carbon, and it gives off sulfur, and it can be taken off through the scrubbers. So it's actually quite an easy process, but you need to start from there. Now, the second step, and if you're looking at the board, you're going, hang on, wait, Tracy, you seem to have missed something out. No, I didn't, because the second step is a purification step, okay, where we take the SO2, we purify it, we get rid of any other gunk that came out when it was burnt, particularly if the SO2 comes from the fact that we got the sulfur from coal. So we need to get rid of all the other stuff along the way. Once it's gone through the purification process, we then get to the fun part. And step 3 is the reason why it's called the contact process, because we now look at the catalytic oxidation of SO2, and the catalyst is a catalyst called vanadium pentoxide. Why do we use vanadium pentoxide? It's a good catalyst, but also we mine vanadium, and if I stand to correction because my geography is just as bad as my economics. We have vanadium mines in Mpumalanga, Limpopo area, so we mine it, okay? It's a horrible mining process, but we do mine it, which makes it a cheaper catalyst for us. It's called the contact process because it's a contact catalyst. We have two gases, and when those two gases come together, we put them in contact with the vanadium pentoxide as a catalyst in a gauze, it's like a gauze wire sort of situation, and we allow the gases to pass through it. Okay? And as the gases pass through it, they're in contact with the catalyst. That gives us SO3. But it's also a gas. From here, SO3 can be dissolved directly into water, but it gives us fuming sulfuric acid. Very, very dangerous. Not a good idea. So, step 4 and 5 sometimes seem a little contrary to each other, but they actually make a lot of sense if you think through it logically. The SO3 is dissolved into sulfuric acid, and it gives us H2S2O7, which is known as pyrosulfurous acid, okay? Sulfurous acid. Love all these names, okay? Pyrosulfurous acid. Sulfuric acid, sorry. I'm lying to you, sulfuric, because of its bond, it's sulfuric acid, okay? It's also known as oleum, but though I don't often see it written as oleum, just because they want to make me look silly when I say it, but it's pyrosulfuric acid. This acid is far more soluble in water, so when I now dissolve it in water, I get sulfuric acid, but I want you to see something here, grade 12s. I put in 1 mole of sulfuric acid, and I get out 2. So I double what I put in. So even though I have to put sulfuric acid in to get sulfuric acid, it's like doubling your investment. Okay, it's like I'm saying, well, if you put in 100 Rand into the bank will give you 200. You get double what you put back. Okay, so we double the amount of sulfuric acid, which then makes it a lot easier for us. Okay, now, from there, and I don't think I put the schematic in for this one. Let me just see. No, I didn't. Okay. We get ammonium sulfate from that. Let me go all the way down. We can also get ammonium phosphates. Okay, a little bit more. So if I take, I'm not going to show you those equations because they're ridiculous, but we mine phosphorus. Phosphate comes up as an insoluble phosphate, which doesn't help us very much. We added sulfur to it. That becomes a soluble phosphate, makes life a lot easier. I'm sorry, even my shirt's falling apart on me today. Okay.
Can we just fix it quick?
We'll just pull it. Sorry, moving on. Anyway, and right now my kids are going, yeah, that sounds about right. That's my teacher.
Falling apart at the seams.
Yep. Now, NPK. The NPK ratio on fertilizers is very, 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 very important. I hope you got that. Every bag of fertilizer has an NPK ratio. That NPK ratio tells me the ratio of, and you can't see the blue on the blue. So let's do this. Nitrogen to phosphorus to potassium. It tells me the makeup of those minerals in the fertilizer. This doesn't mean that I have nitrogen as an element, or phosphorus as an element, or potassium as an element. They are bonded within compounds like potassium chloride, ammonium phosphate, ammonium nitrate, all of those things, ammonium sulfate. So it's bonded with a whole bunch of other stuff in there, okay, which then gives us those 3. This number here tells me what percentage of the bag is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So what we're saying here is that 26% of the bag's makeup is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So if this was a 100 kilogram bag, 26 kilograms is made up of the nitrogen, phosphorus, and the potassium, which then have a ratio of 3:1:4. So of that 26%, 3 parts is nitrogen, 1 part is phosphorus, 4 parts is potassium. So it starts to get a little hinky in your head. But if you wanted to know what percentage any of those are, so if I wanted to know the percentage that the nitrogen makes up of a bag, for in this case, so the percentage nitrogen is 3 parts nitrogen and the total is 8, times 26. Okay, percent. And then, so that would be 26 over 100 because it's the purity of it. And that would give us the percentage that the nitrogen makes up of my whole system. Okay, so it'd be times 26 is 3 over 8, and this actually gives me 9.75%. So if I had a 100 kilogram bag, 9.75 kilograms of that would be nitrogen. Why is it important for us to know this? Because it depends on what the fertilizer needs to be used for. So, for example, if we are growing potatoes need a very high potassium content in their fertilizers. So this probably wouldn't be a good idea either. There's far too much nitrogen in it. We need something with a high potassium content in it. It's very, very important. If you go to a nursery and you look at even plant flower food, your liquid fertilizers, they also use this. It's just in liquid form. Fertilizers come in 2 forms. One where you get the pellets, so it's like granules, and you actually can see where the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium compounds are. And I'm hoping somebody's saying, but if it only makes up 26%, what's the other 74%? The other 74% is what we call fillers. So it's like extra soil or other stuff that's not really that important, but it doesn't make a difference to the fertilizers. We need that so that we can distribute the fertilizer along the ground, because you don't want everything, you don't want that high concentration, because then you can't you got to be careful not to over-nutriate. No, it's not a good word either. You can't put too many nutrients in one place. You've got to be very, very careful, because our soil is very, very sensitive, okay? So the rest is fillers. So when it's in a solid form, it's actually quite easy to see the difference, but you can get in liquid form, which means then you can't tell which is which. And a lot of pot plants and flower food and that sort of thing, and even orchids, which I can't keep alive for all the money in the world, their fertilizer comes in liquid form. Okay, what's important here is fertilizers have a very, 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 very big impact on our environment. Yes, they're great because they allow our plants and our food and our crops to grow faster, but we can over-fertilize. When we over-fertilize, particularly with the nitrogen, all those nutrients seep through the soil into our groundwater. That groundwater eventually runs into our lakes and our rivers and that sort of thing. When it gets into a lake, if there's an overabundance of nitrogen and minerals and nutrients in the lake, that allows algae to grow. That algae becomes what we call an algae bloom. It gives it a horrible green color. That algae starts to strip the water of its oxygen. The algae dies, which is what happens with plants, and it falls to the bottom of the lake and it starts to decay. That decaying process removes oxygen from the water in the lake, depriving fish and plant life of the oxygen they need to survive. So plants and fish start to die, which then in turn allows more algae to grow. So we get this really bad cycle, and it's horrible. If we catch eutrophication in water early enough, it can be fixed, okay? But it means restoring pH levels, removing all the chemicals, and finding where it's coming from. Because it doesn't make any sense in trying to fix the eutrophication process or the problem when we can't find where we're actually doing the damage. We can restore the pH, we can restore the balance, and then we have to restock, because the fish life will not naturally restock itself, okay? We need to help it out. Eutrophication is a huge, huge problem. I am actually hoping that you guys have seen this along the way. Another problem with fertilizers is when we over-fertilize, our soil becomes too acidic. We cannot, then we got to add alkalis, and it becomes a real problem to restore the balance to our soil. Another issue, and this one's actually quite sad, is if there's a high concentration of nitrogen in particular, and those sort of nutrients in drinking water, for pregnant ladies, it actually stops the hemoglobin in a baby's body from carrying the oxygen effectively around the baby's body, and they're born with what is known as blue baby syndrome. And it's called that because they are literally blue. It's very, very sad. Sometimes they recover, sometimes they don't. It's a bit scary.
What if they don't recover? Are they blue human beings?
Okay, that came out wrong. No, they're not blue human beings, but they often have brain damage.
Oh, shame.
Because they haven't had enough oxygen supplied to the brain as they've been developing. And we haven't had a lot of cases in South Africa, but there have been in America. There's been quite a few in America.
And why would there be more in America as opposed to less here?
I think it's the industrialization. And maybe it's just one of those things that they're more likely to make a big deal out of it. We tend to hush things up a little bit. I think we're not quite as aggressive in addressing our environmental issues as the Americans are.
It's interesting.
Or a lot of other countries. I think we get in there. We definitely get in there. I think we should do. Like the thing we had with the rhinos and stuff. But I think when it comes to other issues, we tend to sit back a little bit too much.
We've got quite a few issues to talk about as well.
We do. We have lots of issues. But I think in terms, especially with our drinking water, we're also more aware. It's actually a good place to end it before the next break. We're also more aware of the typical water problems, like where we get cholera and dysentery and gastritis and stuff. We're more aware of those because of our rural communities, and I think we're more aware of those sort of water problems to the ones we have in industrial.
It's probably because it's more topical and relevant
It is.
to
It's-
our area.
It's definitely more topical to where we are as a country, whereas something like blue baby syndrome, when you're in a country that's very industrialized, I think that it makes more sense because they're not as worried about things like cholera and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe it's those future scientists that are going to be bringing these environmental issues to the fore, and I'm sure that you are all watching. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a short little break. We will be back with you shortly. See you now.